5 effective ways to engage students as active participants in campus mental health. And I'll be your host for today's presentation. Today we have Allison Malman, Executive Director and Founder of Active Minds, and Glenn Albright, Co-Founder and Director of Research at Kognito. Before we get started, I just want to briefly go over our agenda for today. So we are covering the 5 effective ways to engage students as active participants in campus mental health. So Glenn will be covering the first portion and going over one of the key ways to engage students in campus mental health, which will be by using virtual humans and how they can be utilized to engage the students. He will be doing a live demonstration of a simulation that uses virtual humans called At Risk for College Students. And in the simulation, you will be able to experience how virtual humans can engage our students. In the second part, Allison Malman from Active Minds will be covering the rest of the portion, so 4 more effective ways to engage our students. And then at the end, we'll be covering the Q&A portion. So again, please enter any questions you may have on the right side of your screen. And with that, I will hand it off to Glenn Albright to do the first portion. Here you go, Glenn.
Thank you, Maria, and good afternoon, everyone. In going to our first slide here, and before we actually begin discussing the effective ways to engage students, I want to talk a little bit about what's going to appear in the next slide as soon as we get it going. What are some of the challenges of engaging students? And a lot of these you already know, but we're going to start off on the same page. That we know that students have a lot of negative stereotypes about mental health, about counseling, seeking help, and some of these are unfortunately also shared by faculty. And that's one of the resistances of getting students to seek help. In addition to confidentiality, if I go to the counseling center, who will know about it? Will my parents know about it? Some students think that cost is going to be prohibited. They're not, they don't realize that many of the services available at the colleges are either free or for very, very little charge. Time commitment is also a concern of students, especially around the times of midterms and finals where we know stress is really up, and counseling can be particularly helpful. Certainly types of services like stress management and time management frequently offered by counseling services would be very helpful. And then there's the attitude that you should be able to handle it yourself. If you have a problem, it's my responsibility. I don't need help. I can work through this myself, or I should be able to work through this myself. And we all know that mental health resources are stretched to a max, which really, prevents the counseling centers often from augmenting their outreach efforts and having the organizational capacity to handle the increased load when you do engage in outreach efforts, and the importance of recruiting from top down to engage students. This ranges everything from everyone from the provost to the deans, to the chairs, right down to the faculty members. All can be involved in engaging students to become more active in their mental health. And last but certainly not least is that frequently mental health resources aren't available to the evening students. I know a lot of counseling centers that are not open at 5 o'clock or afterwards, and if you dial in, they mention if there's an emergency, call 911. And many evening students would really appreciate longer hours, which again stretches out the resources. Before I actually get into virtual characters, a little bit about Kognito. We're a New York City-based simulation and learning design company. We have a lot of people, 50 learning design scientists, animators, researchers, programmers, artists, software engineers. And we specialize in creating digital experiences that prepare people for the conversations that matter most. And these conversations that matter most focus in on social, emotional, and physical health components. And the work that is the conversation engine that drives these digital experiences are rooted in the science of learning, social cognition, and game mechanics. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And in terms of impact and outreach, we're very fortunate to have a rather substantial impact with 500 plus clients in education and government, nonprofits, and healthcare markets. And the simulations available to students and faculty are now reaching about 400 colleges, healthcare providers in 10 states, and also what's very cool, not so appropriate for this audience, because this is aimed at high school, that we are available in 40% of the public high schools in this country. So we're very happy and proud to have an opportunity to make an impact on a lot of faculty, teachers, and students, and also that several of our simulations are evidence-based. They've been submitted and accepted by the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices. So why virtual humans? We know that students love virtual humans. They grew up with them, they've seen them in the movies, they interact with them in games, they're engaged by them, very familiar, very comfortable. And if we were to just start off by defining a virtual human, they're automated agents that converse, understand, reason, and exhibit emotions. They possess a three-dimensional body and perform tasks through dialogues with humans. And you and I and our students have all had experiences with virtual humans, whether we know it or not. Next slide, please. And as an example, we have Apple Siri, we have the U.S. Army, Sergeant Star. All of these are virtual humans that are reaching you vis-a-vis audio connections, and then we have these audio connections that are hooked up in actual virtual characters like USC, SimCoach, University of Florida, Pediatrics, and Low Language Proficiency. All of these are leading us to the point where we have developed virtual humans that actually now contain personalities, memory, and emotional responses that allow you to interact with them. And there are a lot of advantages to this. That, number one, when you and I start conversing with a virtually human, we feel safer to self-disclose. We feel less likely to be judged. We can take more risk with a virtual human. So the engagement, the openness is increased. And this also decreases transference reaction because you're talking to a virtual human. It's a neutral-looking character, and the way they're behaving decreases transference, which allows you to focus more on the learning. That associated with the decrease in social evaluative threat, which is the anxiety you experience in like face-to-face role plays, where you're worried about being judged or you're not able to be yourself, as opposed to a virtual human where that threat is minimized. Then we had the uncanny valley, which I'll talk about a little while. Just some other benefits, obviously you can personalize the experience depending on how you converse with your virtual human, and the cost and updates are easy because you can really reskin these avatars to be a different gender, a different race very, very easily. So the uncanny valley is the idea that as virtual characters approach looking more and more human-like, they generate a degree of anxiety that increases cognitive load and decreases learning. So you have to be very careful in how you craft them so they don't look too real, where you're going to distract the learner, yet they look real enough that they're engaging and you can relate to them. I won't spend much time on this other than the fact that these are the types of constructs that are built within the conversation engine, ranging from mentalizing and empathic accuracy. Mentalizing is your ability to understand that people are different than you. They have their own attitudes and thoughts and beliefs, and that's okay. So there's an element of acceptance in this. Empathic accuracy is learning to understand what people feel without you feeling it, which is empathy. Empathy is when you're actually feeling it. And of course, in terms of the communication aspects, the models we incorporate are motivational interviewing, collaboration, trust, empathic listening, and emotional self-regulation. That is to be able to understand what you're feeling in these meaningful, challenging conversations and what the person you're talking to is feeling, and then be able to mentalize in a way that you can navigate that conversation to be very effective. So in terms of the applications in student mental health, we have a large suite of digital experiences that address student mental health, and they provide information on warning signs, general mental health, and not just suicide, because we know that depression is often comorbid with other disorders. So we want the student to be sensitized to anxiety, signs of substance abuse in addition to depression. And then each simulation has available support services that are customized within or to the institution that they're being disseminated in addition to addressing misconceptions or stereotypes. There's tailored versions to support LGBTQ populations and veteran students. And veteran students comes in two forms, peer-to-peer veteran student, because we know veterans bring to campus a special number of concerns that our normal students don't have. So how does a fellow veteran student support each other? And then lastly, training faculty in military cultural competency and how to identify, like say, a veteran student who's experiencing post-deployment stress. The simulated conversations with the virtual students, they allow the users to practice. And that word practice is in bold because that's what really differentiates us from all the effective ways that are available to colleges to train their students about mental health. I mean, these are face-to-face training programs, online programs, all very rich in content, but they don't have the role play practice component that you need to drive changes in behavior. So just one last thing, that the programs I just mentioned are all in the SPRC Best Practices Registry. And now we get into the simulation of at-risk for university students. The series of interactive scenarios where you are taking on the role of Travis and you are trying to identify which of your 4 friends is experiencing psychological distress to the point where you feel compelled to talk to them. So you have Anna, Mike, Travis, and Taylor, all experiencing typical signs of psychological distress a student will experience, but in this case, Travis, you're particularly concerned about. So you're going to enter into a conversation with Travis, and I'll show you how it works right now. Okay, the character on the left is Travis. The character on the right is Jesse. Jesse is a virtual human, emotionally responsive, has his own personality and memory. Your character is represented by an avatar, and the way you communicate with Jesse is through these conversation tactics. These are all the right things and the wrong things to say. They're determined by subject matter experts, nationally known subject matter experts, and end users, and after multiple beta testings. Now, I'm dropping you right in the middle of the simulation and skipping over about 20 minutes of it where you're going to learn about warning signs, where you're going to learn about all types of best practices in communicating with Jesse. So you have 2 options right here. Again, we're about 4 or 5 minutes into the conversation. You're plunked right in the middle. So Jesse has dropped out of his major, and he's overwhelmed, he's overloaded, he's beginning to withdraw. So his major was art. You could say, I thought you loved your painting, or you could give an opinion, I think it's just a phase, you can't stop painting, or what will you do now? So let's say, I thought you loved painting. We're just checking on audio here. Hold on just a second. It seems to have frozen up on us. Not even getting options here. We're working out on a technical problem here. It's amazing that this was like working like 5 minutes ago. All right, well, let's take me right to the PowerPoint. So it's always nice when these things happen. I just want to point out that as you begin to talk to Jesse, these conversation tactics will change, and you can either say things that kind of like put him on defense, on guard, and then a virtual coach will come up and give you a suggestion on how to better handle it, or in some cases you make really the right question. You're not judgmental, you're kind of like maybe summarizing or asking an open-ended statement, and then the coach might come up just to reinforce that type of conversation tactic. So once you go through the simulation, which you will receive a link for the demo in this PowerPoint, does it work? So there's been several studies examining efficacy, and the one you see there, you can go through the demographics. It's with 270 students. The thing to really focus in on is its impact on what we refer to as total gatekeeper skills. So we see a statistically significant change that holds up at 3 months later from baseline to follow-up in total gatekeeper skills, which is a composite variable of the student's skill to identify when a behavior of a peer is a sign of psychological distress, discuss the concerns with the peer, motivate the peer to seek help, and make a referral. That's really neat when you see a sustained, significant change like that. In our next slide, I think we need to go back one, I'm not sure. Okay, forward. Thank you. We see what we refer to as satisfaction or level 1 measures, and we see, not surprisingly, it's using virtual characters in a very interactive role-playing format. 98% rated the program as good, very good, or excellent. 92% said they would recommend the course to their friends or peers. 96% said it was based on scenarios relevant to them. So we see these satisfaction ratings way up. Next slide. But does it impact behavior? So if you go to the bottom of this slide, you'll see a change in the amount of students reported that they were concerned about, approached, and referred to support services at baseline 2 months before they took the training, and then 2 months after the training. So you're seeing a significant increase reported by the students of the number of fellow students they identified, talked to, and referred. And another really exciting point for me here is that students who did take the training reported that they would be more likely to self-refer if they ever experienced psychological distress. And that's really nice to see, because in learning to help a fellow student, you are indeed learning to help yourself, which is exactly what we want to see. And lastly, integrating digital experiences, best practices, just to mention a few, because I know Allison's going to be going into a lot of them, but to integrate the training into the class curriculum. Now I'm talking about Psych 1001, which all colleges and universities have a huge student population taking intro. And this type of training fits nicely into the pedagogy of the course, where you're talking about development, you're talking about emotions and stress, motivation, and especially abnormal psychology. So you're giving a chance to students to learn about the statistics, you're normalizing disorders, if you will, because they're so prevalent. And then in response to the training, you ask them, and this is an assignment that's been done at several colleges that I'm aware of, you ask them two questions related to their experience. The first question is, just describe a stressful situation that happened to you or someone you know. What the situation was, what was the outcome, and then question number 2, now that you've taken the at-risk training, what would you have done differently? So this is an excellent way of them to start thinking about how they would integrate what they've learned, number 1. And number 2, it's also a writing exercises, which we know that universities and colleges are really strongly enhancing or motivating students to write more. And it's a real fun assignment for them to write, because they're engaged, it's about themselves, it's about something that's very, very meaningful to them. Salisbury University has made it a requirement for all freshmen taking first year. I know that Penn State Altoona makes it a requirement for freshmen even before they come onto campus. Many colleges have included a simulation in a new student checklist, which means they're not requiring it, but they're highly recommending that they take this simulation along with a number of other things they should do when they come to campus or before they come to campus. And building parent support by hosting a discussion. We all know that when a student comes to campus or before they select the college, there's meetings with students and parents, and there's usually a presentation from the counseling center about how important mental health is to the students, to the college. And if you inform the parents that the students will be taking this simulation, it really is of very great interest to them, and it acts as an intrinsic incentive for students, and even sometimes the parents want to see it, which is really great. And of course, you can include a bookmark with the course information in orientation packets. Okay, now I'm very, very happy to turn this over to Allison.
Thank you so much, and hello everybody. I'm thrilled and honored to be with you. My name is Allison Malman. I am the Executive Director and Founder of Active Minds, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about this whole concept of engaging students as active participants in campus mental health. I think many of us may come from different perspectives, and I really see this as an opportunity to talk both about engaging students in their own mental health on campus, as well as engaging students in participants in actively helping campus mental health and the mental health on campus. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both, and we'll start with just a basic introduction to Active Minds. We are a national nonprofit organization. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C., founded in 2003, so we're just coming into our 13th year. We were formed as a student group on campus when I was a freshman. Well, I should say my brother died by suicide when I was a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania, and then formed I formed a student group on my campus in my junior year, and then after I graduated, started a nonprofit organization with the goal to increase the dialogue and conversation about mental health on campus. My brother had struggled with his own mental health throughout his tenure on his campus. Finally did get help, came home, took a leave of absence, a voluntary leave of absence, but ended up taking his own life after being home for just about a year. And I quickly reflected on the fact that he had been on campus for so long, struggling so severely without feeling comfortable telling anybody, and with friends and those close to him noticing some changes and behavioral changes, but nobody knew what they were, nobody knew what to say, so they didn't say anything. So that's the history of the organization. We started as that one student group on my campus at the University of Pennsylvania, and have since grown to this national nonprofit organization with just over 400 chapters on college, university, and high school campuses across the country, all run by student volunteers with on-campus staff advisors, with the opportunity to bring about attention and awareness to mental health on campus. These are all students and staff who have pledged their extracurricular time to promoting mental health conversation on campus. In addition to our campus network, we have about a dozen national programs that we roll out through our chapters, and we roll out on a national level. Most of them have come from demand and really what we've seen our students doing on their campuses and asking of us, with the whole idea to further engage students and young adults in mental health and become the student voice in mental health. And you'll see in my in some of the tips and tricks I have later on, one of the things that we have definitely learned is one of the very basic things that you can do is really help give students a voice in this topic. As you can see, our mission simply is to empower students to speak openly about mental health in order to educate others and encourage help seeking. We are changing the culture on campuses and in the community by providing information, leadership opportunities, and advocacy training to the next generation. So when we go to the question of, why should we engage students, we've already talked a little bit about how campus, it's difficult to engage students, but I also think it's also critically important to think about the reasons that we should be doing this. And here are just a few quick thoughts from us at Active Minds. One is just the concept of first responders. We know through statistics that students are turning to their friends before they are turning to anybody else. And there is incredible opportunity here to be educating students about their own mental health and their friends' mental health in order to get students into the clinical support services that they need. And again, first responders are not necessarily the ones that are doing the surgery, but it's getting people into the care that they deserve, that they need, and we see time and time again that students are turning to each other, and that there is incredible peer opportunity to help liaison with the campus mental health services and other services in the community. It's cost effective. As most of you know, students volunteer their time, they work for free. It is one of the most cost effective ways to get students to be connected to the mental health resources and services that they need. Students on campus are finding their passion, and they're using their extracurricular time to really, really change the world, and they are willing to do so in mental health. And so don't underestimate the power that students will provide even when they are volunteering. I think it's also, this is kind of where that line is drawn in terms of engaging students in their own mental health and engaging students with campus mental health. We see time and time again through Active Minds that getting involved in advocacy work is personally transformational for students who are in treatment or dealing with personal experiences. Many of us come to this field with personal experiences, and we do so wanting to do something with it. And what we've really seen, kind of an unintended consequence in getting involved in advocacy, as we've seen with our students, is that so many students, their own recovery is helped. They are able to find a space and a niche on campus whereby they couldn't have found before, and they felt isolated and they felt alone, and they meet other people that are like them, and become friends with people who have shared experiences, and have a transformative campus experience, on-campus experience through doing advocacy work. And so again, by engaging them on a more professional level, you will and really can help students at a personal level. And then workforce development, you can never really underestimate the fact that this field always needs new individuals. And one of the things that I've been so heartened to see over the past 12 years of Active Minds is that this generation that we were talking about, current students and those who have recently graduated, see mental health and think of mental health in a totally different way than generations past. They're not as afraid to talk about these issues. The problem is they're never really given the right words to use, because we do still have so much social stigma that they're not really learning about these issues in high school. They're not really learning about these issues as openly as they are about other physical health issues in other venues. And so by engaging your students in campus mental health, you're really going to help give them the right words to use and give them a clear professional path, and it really will help build the workforce. As we've tracked Active Minds members over the past 12 years, a large majority of them stay within the field of mental health somehow, whether it be in psychology and social work and psychiatry, also going into nursing, also going into leadership positions where they're bringing mental health theme into the work, mental health law, you name it, there's a mental health component of all of it. And then you can see in the box that from our experience, we have there's a diversity in who and how are getting involved in groups like Active Minds, student advocacy work on campus. What's important in this is just to show that there is a connection between the personal and the professional. And still, there are students who may not have personal experiences. We can't tell you a personal story, but are interested in this field professionally, and will jump at the opportunity to get involved. Before I go to the next slide, I guess what I will say too is Active Minds, and we're proud of our growth over the past 12 years. We're proud that we have these chapters of 400 campuses. We have done it entirely reactively. We have grown to these 400 chapters because students and staff have come to us and said, this is a topic that's important. I want to do something on my campus. I want to get on my campus. And so there is, if you build it, they will come. If you give them an opportunity to get involved, they will, and to break the silence around these issues. So when we do move over to the ways to engage students, one of the things that you'll hear me talk a lot about is culture and conversation, because one of the things, we talk often about getting students the services that they need and accessibility. These things are all critically important. I would venture to say that we need to think about this as this is an access issue, and it's an emotional access issue. We need to make seeking mental health services and getting involved in helping campus climate around mental health, make it a public health issue, where we look at the language that we're using, where we look at the culture and the conversation that's happening on our campuses. Make the topic relatable and accessible. This is a scary topic. People don't jump at the chance to go to a presentation about suicide because we haven't talked about it. These are young adults who haven't necessarily had the opportunity to talk about this in the past. And yet, what we have found at Active Minds is that students acknowledge on a daily basis that they are stressed, and they are extremely stressed. The depression and anxiety are the two most prominent issues that are impacting student health and mental health. And so let's make this topic accessible and relatable from the beginning. Do programming around stress relief. We have a national program called Stress Less Week that happens primarily, our chapters will run it in the end of each semester, December and April, but stress relief at any given time. And even if you're not a chapter, there's opportunity to do it in a community action kit. Do things that are non-intimidating. Some of the most popular programs for Stress Less Week are Pet a Puppy, bringing in shelter animals for students to pet, have recess on the quad, have free massages, play tag, very basic things that get students in a stress relief mode to acknowledge that they are stressed. And as you do it, educate them and give them information about clinical anxiety disorders, resources that the Counseling Center offers for those who may be struggling, resources on campus and off campus if this is something that's impacting your daily life and your everyday. In so many ways, it's making this not an issue of us versus them and black versus white, but recognize that we may not all have mental illness, but we all have mental health. And so let's talk about mental health in a way that is accessible and in a way that gives us the opportunity to also talk about mental illness. Number two, support a student group. Obviously, that is the direction from which Active Minds comes, and whether it's Active Minds or not, I think it's critically important that campuses are supporting student activation around mental health on campus. You know, the work that we do is on peer awareness and education and advocacy, on campus advocacy, getting students talking about mental health issues. If your campus is focused on peer support, if, you know, whatever it may be, it's critically important that you support that for a number of reasons. One, students who are active on campus need a staff member or a faculty or admin liaison to help with the bureaucratic red tape on campus. You know a lot about the system of campus that students don't know and or have access to things that students don't have access to. You are also critically important to the transition of the student leadership from year to year. As you all know, working with a student group, you can have you know, the strongest of students one year, and that strong group of students then goes abroad or graduates or whatever it may be. Your presence as an engaged advisor and liaison really helps that student group exist from year to year, transition from year to year. And then finally, that supporting a student group shows students on campus that this administration cares. And cares about them. And this is, again, going to that conversation about culture. I can't underscore how important it is to students to see that their campus cares about their health and mental health. And the simple act of supporting a student group on campus shows students that this is a campus that cares and this is an administration that cares. Number three, bring up the conversation early and often and everywhere. You've heard me say it already, make mental health a public health issue. This is not just an issue that sits in the Counseling Center. This is not just an issue that can sit just in the Counseling Center. We all know that resources exist throughout campus, and the more upstream work we can do in prevention and early intervention, the less we need to talk about more severe clinical support when it happens. So this needs to exist in freshman orientation, you know, well into the fall semester, students going into fall break, and continue throughout the year. Again, this is a space where it's critically important that there is mental health programming in freshman orientation, but if it stops there, students think that, you know, that's all. You put it into freshman orientation just because. There needs to be conversation about mental health in January and in March, and for reasons that don't necessarily exist elsewhere, but to show students that we recognize that your mental health is part of your overall well-being, and to be a successful student on this campus, you need to be well, and we care about this year-round. Coaches need to be trained, residence assistants need to be trained, dining hall staff need to be trained, all in the conversation about how do we identify those students who may be struggling, how do we create a safe space for students who need help, and what is so important is that we keep students part of this conversation, which takes us to, and you've heard, I should say, Glenn has already said that counseling center services, as much as you can offer clinical services outside of the 9 to 5, outside of the traditional counseling center, even if it's there, make sure that counseling center is accessible, make sure it's not on the far corner of campus, and as much as you can do, if you can't provide the services yourself, creates a liaison, gives students the opportunity to have a phone number to call, even if it's simply supporting the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline or the Crisis Text Line. There are 24/7 resources available to students. If you can't offer them, just let them know where they can access them. And then finally, sit at one table. This is something that is so important to me, and I think really drives the work that we do at Active Minds, and is so important for me, for everybody to hear, is that we can't have an active conversation about student mental health and campus mental health without students at the table. And students need to feel heard, they need to feel respected, and what you'll see and do once you involve them in your work is that you will see that they have the most incredible ideas, dynamic, smart, innovative, cheap, and really impactful and effective ways to reach their peers, and in ways that we have actually seen both impact student lives, change student lives, save student lives, and increase the effectiveness of the on-campus clinical services. So, you know, at the beginning of my presentation, the title of this presentation is Getting Rid of the Kids Table. Involve students in your task forces, involve them. If you have a provost committee on mental health, make sure there's student participation and it's active, that it's not just a token student sitting there because you want them to. You'll just be blown away by the impact they can have on the work and the ideas that you might have. So I just want to very quickly turn next to the Active Minds Healthy Campus Award to give you a few ideas. Active Minds offers a Healthy Campus Award. We first presented or open applications for the Healthy Campus Award at this time last year, and applications are up right now for 2016. Active Minds wants to celebrate leadership, innovation, collaboration, and excellence that's emerging from colleges and universities, and inspire locally driven change across the country. We really want to recognize and celebrate those schools that are prioritizing health and making great progress toward creating a campus that fosters student health and well-being. We have a whole list of metrics by which we've evaluated those who've applied for the Active Minds Healthy Campus Award. We were excited this past September to award our first 5 Healthy Campus Award winners. And one of the components of being awarded a Healthy Campus Award is to have active student involvement. So pulling out just 2 examples, and I'll point everybody to a website, which is just activeminds.org to get more information. The University of Minnesota is one of our Healthy Campus Award winners. The University of Minnesota has very active participation of students on their Provost Committee on Student Mental Health. And they have also trained students in dorms, fraternity houses, sorority houses, and whatnot. So they have active student participation in their administrative campus work, as well as going, and as I said before, meeting students where they are in the dorms and the fraternity and sorority houses. And then the final example I'm going to give you is from UN Greensboro, University of North Carolina, sorry, UNC Greensboro. The University of North Carolina Greensboro is another one of our Healthy Campus Award winners. They have done quite a bit about getting students engaged and involved via residential life, as well as having a wellness living learning community whereby students are living this every day, health and well-being, with mental health being a component of what they're doing, as well as engaging students in student athlete mental health and athletics in general, and really engaging students in hearing, getting their needs and assessing the needs of students and what they're feeling and what they're seeing in order to address the mental health issues that are most pressing to students on our campus. So I will end there, but again, I am so thrilled to be with you and be able to present with you, and certainly available for questions, as is Glenn at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Allison. Before we move to Q&A, we're going to attempt to put the demo back on the screen. So if you bear with us just a couple more minutes, we're going to try to show you the demo, and Glenn will lead that in just one moment. All right, folks. We're suffering from a little bit of a technical difficulty here with our computer, but we will surely send you a link to access the demo. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with Q&A portion of this presentation. And one of the questions is for Allison. One of our viewers, they have a question that one of their concerns with the Active Mind sustainability on their campus is about once their student leaders graduate, how do you sustain the same passion for maintaining their chapter, with the same momentum?
Yeah, it's a great question and something that we've really been focused on for most of our tenure. So there are a couple of things that I would say. First, again, active advisor relationship is really critical for this transition to happen. So I encourage you just to continue doing what you're doing and continue to be involved. One of the things that we are really focused on at Active Minds is leadership development. One of the things that we have found here at the National Office is that students come to this field and this cause they get it and they care about mental health so deeply. What they may not have is a lot of experience in developing leadership, which in our mind includes sustainability, leadership sustainability, and transition and whatnot. So one of the things that we really do is we focus on that level of leadership development, how to budget, how to make sure early on that you have underclassmen involved to impart on the students that how critically important it is that this sticks around once they leave. I would just say continue to involve underclassmen as much as possible. We require of any new Active Minds chapter that there is a certain number of underclassmen involved from the very beginning, so that even if you lose one very strong student, you have a host of them coming up from underneath to take over. Not only involve underclassmen in as members, but give them leadership roles early on so that they have the confidence to take over leadership once their senior membership leaves. One of the things that we have found is that students get intimidated by the incredible leadership that some of their more upperclassmen demonstrate. What you can do is continue to help give those underclassmen more leadership opportunities when they're younger, so that they have this opportunity and they have the confidence to take over when they go. We have definitely found that chapters, despite the best of intentions, chapters go quiet or more quiet after strong student leadership leaves. But we also then find within a semester or two, many of those chapters come back when a student picks up and says, hey, this used to exist on campus. I remember this from freshman year. I really hope that it can stay strong. Let me take over. And so don't get discouraged. Do everything that you can to help involve underclassmen. Do everything that you can to impart the need on upperclassmen about training a next generation of students to get involved. It's not just about getting you and your friends there, but it's really reaching out to the whole campus community so this can exist after you go. Create events that are that get people on campus so excited that it just has to happen next year. A lot of those stress relief activity events, stress less week events, have become so popular on campus that students really want to become part of Active Minds because they want to help plan it, so it's kind of a no-brainer. And then otherwise, if that just doesn't work, keep it going, keep it active as much as you can as a staff person and as an advisor, so that students can see that it once existed and can pick up the reins and starting the chapter up again.
Thank you so much, Allison. Glenn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, Allison, you covered this quite comprehensively. Just a couple of thoughts that came to my mind is kind of orientates itself to the leadership perspective of this, is that reminding students that this is an incredible experience to put on their resume or their CV, that it really shows or differentiates them from other students when they've taken a role like this, especially if they're going into graduate school. It can be very, very helpful. The other thought was in aligning or partnering with other clubs on campus. Whether, well, for example, at Baruch College, we have the Difference Makers, which is a club comprised of the special needs or the students from learning disabilities, and to involve them with Active Minds. They work together, they overlap in what their interests are, or perhaps even if campus has the Psy-Chi, the Psychology Honor Society, to link into them. The more connections or networking you can make within campuses, the more you're likely to be able to manage the change that occurs as students graduate.
Thank you, Glenn. The next question is actually for you, Glenn. When you mentioned the training, is there any reporting that a school can receive to understand how many students are engaged in the training?
That's a great question, and yes, the answer, there is reporting available that will show you exactly who's taken the training, who's completed the course. Sometimes students start the course and they come back and it's automatically bookmarked. We can provide the demographics of usage. And what's really very cool about this, being that it's online, all the simulations that we have a pre-survey followed directly by a post-survey, and then usually a 3-month follow-up, although it can be at any designated time. And we have a standard set of validated measures that we include in pre, post, and follow-up that evaluate gatekeeper skills, as an example. But this also allows the institution to use their own metrics if they have questions that are unique that they want to include, especially questions that there may be that they have to demonstrate efficacy in a certain way to administrators, or anything that would help them or to support them, we can include seamlessly within these measures, with these surveys, and then give a report.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Allison, are there any thoughts about expanding Active Minds to a high school level?
Yeah, we actually, of our slightly over 400 chapters, a few dozen of them are actually in high schools. So we already have them in high schools. Our focus has been on colleges for a number of reasons. One being that's where I came from when we started this, and we really want to perfect and hone in on our college model, recognizing that the high school model is it's going to be it's going to be different. You're working with different barriers and different strengths, and we just don't have the capacity to do it all perfectly and well, and we take pride in doing things as well as we can. So we will definitely be actively looking into high schools. I would say, as you might expect, there are additional challenges with high schools, primarily working through some of the systemic barriers and the additional stigma. The advantage of working within the college population is that any college student can start any student group that he or she wants, as long as they go through the process on their campus and through their Office of Student Life. And we require all of our chapters to be registered student groups on campus. When you get to the high school level, it takes the approval generally of the teachers, principal, superintendent, whatnot. And unfortunately, we still see such significant stigma among administrators often that the high school students who are interested in starting chapters have a very difficult time getting the buy-in of their administration to start the group. So we do have high school chapters. We will, when we have the resources and the ability, be more proactive about it. We recognize that there are additional barriers that we're going to need to help students through, and we want to make sure we have the capacity to really be able to help that.
Allison, this is Glenn, and very heartened to hear that you're going into high schools. I mean, and you and I both know that the earlier that you identify and get people into services, the more likely you are to be successful. And it's just a natural fit. And students at that age, particularly, in late adolescence, have so many problems they're dealing with, not only in school, but parents and bullying and so on. And in fact, it would be kind of fun to work with you because we're in a large number of high schools, both throughout the country. In Texas, for example, I think we have something like 30,000 high school teachers we trained, in Fairfax, Virginia, and so on. It's in Ohio, and so maybe there's something that we can do to open up more access to Active Minds and these types of clubs, because gosh, the students would really, I think, gravitate to it so nicely.
Yeah. No, they do, and I appreciate that. And even with the question too, as I speak to the challenge necessarily of getting chapters going in high schools, we have of a the programs that I mentioned at the beginning, we have a Young Adult Mental Health Speakers Bureau made up of young adults who have personal experience with mental health, who have been trained to tell their personal story to different high school, college, conference audiences, and quite a few of our engagements with our Speakers Bureau are in high schools. And we were also proud this fall to have our first set of high school displays of our Send Silence Packing program, our suicide prevention exhibit. Many of you may have seen it. It's a large-scale public display of over 1,100 backpacks representing the number of college students who die by suicide each year. And we travel those backpacks that have been donated by family and friends and have the stories and pictures of individuals who have died. We travel to different campuses and public spaces, and we were able to have a partnership with a foundation to bring the program and a set of speakers to high schools, a set of high schools in the LA area. So there is opportunity, we find much easier opportunity for programming in high schools, and so I think there's an interesting connection, Glenn, where we can make with Kognito work as well as the work of Active Minds, and we definitely see students really wanting to be involved in high schools. They just face some additional challenges in organizing a full group.
Thank you. The next question is again about the simulation that Glenn mentioned. One of the questions for campuses is affordability, which can be a little bit problematic. Are there any ways to assist with the cost of using this program?
Boy, it's another great question. That well, there's a couple of thoughts that come to my mind. First of all, there are grants available, like GLS grants, Garrett Lee Smith grants. There are also grants available within states, and in many cases, especially if the institution's big enough, there's internal grants that you can go for, especially if there's a research component tied to it. And so since we're doing pre, post, and follow-up, you know, we can ask the questions and have the outcome measures to support the research if anybody's interested in collaborating at that level and even submitting it as a manuscript to be considered for publication. The University of Michigan has a psychologist. No, he's not a psychologist. He's an economist, Dan Eisenberg, who's done a number of different studies on looking at the ROI, return on investment, in investing in counseling services, and shows how this actually, in the long run, is a very smart business decision on the part of colleges. So approaching it at that institutional level. And we will certainly provide a link to a white paper that describes that so one could use it in approaching administration. And the other thought, just more directly, because I'm not the business person, and but these are licenses that are purchased either by colleges or in some cases the states, and usually cost per person is very, very affordable, and being that it has the luxury of being online 24/7 and been shown efficacious, it's usually something that people are interested in spending the money. And so I would, Allison, you'd have to help me here in terms of specific numbers, because I don't know what it is. So maybe they can contact you, or you can tell them who to contact.
Yes, so we can definitely provide you with more information in terms of how to get funding to implement training or simulation.
I forgot, on our website there is a whole part that helps you or provides information to support your grant writing. So that's a source that that we can also send you. So you're going to get the white paper, you're going to get the grant funding resource where you can use that content. You're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint, both in terms of a PDF. I'm taking Allison, or I'm taking Maria's job here, and a copy of access to a recording of it, plus a link so you can see it really work and enjoy it. And am I leaving anything out, Maria?
You got it all covered, Glenn. I'm going to go on a coffee break. The next question for you, Allison, a lot of people are interested in the Healthy Campus Award and how they can submit an application for their campus. Is every campus eligible to submit an application?
Yes, every campus is absolutely eligible. If you go to our website, which is activeminds.org, you will find sorry, I'm trying to find the short link because we actually just posted it today. But you will find a slide on there with all the information to access both the criteria as well as the application. We were so overwhelmed with high quality applications last year, and we are looking forward to putting that out again for everybody. The short link is just www.activeminds.org/award. So you'll find all the information about it. Where it's open to all schools within the United States. We were pleased to recognize large schools, small schools, community college as an honorable mention. So definitely take a look at the criteria. Applications are due in February, and we will announce the winners along with a large-scale media tour next fall.
Thank you very much, Allison. And that brings us to the hour. So I want to take a few seconds to just say thank you to both Allison and Glenn for the wonderful presentation they have brought to us today. I do want to remind you that we will have an encore presentation tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time in case you want to ask more questions or revisit some of the stuff we covered today. We will be sending you a copy of the presentation slide, as Glenn mentioned, and we will be also sending the ROI white paper that you may share with your campus, as well as the recording. And we will also share some of the resource links to where to submit for the Healthy Campus Award. So I want to thank you again. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Take care.